and then the spinning cylinder, right, gives the oil more surface area to evaporate, and we can evaporate this ethanol off of this oil, or whatever your extractant is, off of the oil and leave the terpenes and the light molecules intact. A still type methodology on the right-hand slide. Here's Bucci as the original inventor of the rotovape, and this is an explosion-proof model. It's 4 20-liter rotovapes, or it's actually two rotovapes and 2 20-liter collection vessels, because the ethanol or the solvent has to go somewhere afterwards. This particular setup costs $120,000, and it's fully explosion-proof. Now, I'm going to caution you guys when we're starting to get into this extraction medium with any of these tools that we're using. These tools are all this equipment is going to need to be in an explosion-proof setting. In my area where we live right now in Santa Rosa, they've allowed ethanol, but they're not. We've got different classes of license. Class 6 is to get up to, you can do infused oils and edibles. Class 7 is volatile solvents. So they're not allowing. Class 7 is going to be really hard to get anywhere, just because law enforcement is frightened of it, and legislatures are frightened of it because they don't understand that it's being done in other industries all over the place. But when we throw the word cannabis into it, they get scared. So we've managed to, in Santa Rosa, to get them to approve ethanol extraction, because they have to use ethanol extraction for the CO2 extraction that they've already approved. So they had to put a secondary measure and allow it's a modified class 6 or a modified class 7 license. But the rooms have to be explosion proof that these things go in. They have to go into their own ventilated walk-in fume hood, or basically a paint booth that you would find in an auto body shop, so that the guy's going to be in there painting your car. He's not going to blow up every time, because every time the light comes on. So be aware. I haven't been into a laboratory or a production facility in California yet that's had a county or a city or a state inspector walk through, but we're all going to have those sooner or later. So, and in California, it's going to be sooner. Here's an industrial ethanol extraction plant. And again, like I said, this is more along the lines of what my career was involved. Was this type of systems. The first ethanol distillery that I hooked up was in the mid-70s, and their still would take up the back half of this room. So another methodology is infusing cannabis directly into carrier oil, like olive oil or coconut oil, or any of the other high-fat oils. We've chosen olive oil because of its shelf life, and it appears to hold more cannabinoid. We've checked it against hemp oil, grapeseed oil, rapeseed oil. We're looking at safflower oil, and we've kind of gone the gambit with the oils. The grapeseed oil was a fairly good carrier, but people were getting gas, and they were complaining about it because it was a disaster digestively. Hemp seed oil was not had no shelf life at all. MCT oil spoils quickly. Coconut oil is fairly good, but it doesn't seem to hold as much cannabinoid. We use coconut oil in our topical, but we use olive oil in our infused olive oil, Pros are it's easy. We get a complete terpene and cannabinoid transfer in our infusions based on our methodologies, and it's the best and the easiest dosing. And I say the best because the cannabinoid's a fat molecule, and it's got to, if you're going to ingest it or take it through your mucosal layer sublingually, it's going to take a little piggyback on that fat molecule that's already in the olive oil, and it'll go into your mucosal layer easier, or it'll go through your gut easier. The cons are that it's hard to get up to a high strength. You're not going to ever get a 90% oil out of just on an infusion from putting raw cannabis plants into the olive oil and get it up to like the strength of a full extract. It's messy. You've got to get the ethanol, or you've got to get the olive oil out of the plant matter, and it's like any of the other methodologies. We've got to put the plant matter in and take it out after we're done, but this has oil on it, so it's a little bit more messy. And it's a non-combustible product. You're not going to be able to smoke this after you finish making it. So it's strictly an edible and topical and ingestible product. Here's some infusion systems. The first thing we started off with was called the Magic Pan. I got I got into this. I'm allergic to alcohol, and I'm allergic to opiates. And I had to go 6.5 years ago, I had to go in for major back surgery where they kind of replaced one of my whole vertebrae going in from the front and the back. An 8.5-hour surgery, and I got off of opiates in 5 weeks after that surgery, which was unheard of by my doctor. So we just started, we went to the dispensaries and we tried to get some consistent medicine, and we couldn't find anything. One night we'd be up all night, one night it would knock me out, one time it wouldn't work, one time it would, I'd get paranoid. So we decided to see if we couldn't control this. We found out there was testing labs, so we decided we were going to make our own oil and then take it to the testing lab. And since my wife's a process engineer, she measured every single dose that I took, especially at the beginning. And there's, sure enough, a few times we overdid it, but for the most part, we started to get really, really consistent, and we started to see that, wow, maybe this can be, maybe this is dosable. Maybe we can do this. So, here's a little infusion system, kind of like the next step up from the pan. You can take any cannabis, put it in a pan. We started off with like 94 grams, and we mixed that with 1 liter of oil, and we put it in our little Magic Pan, and we cooked that for about 5.5 hours at about 200 degrees, maybe 210, a little hotter for CBD, and we got all of the cannabinoids out of that plant matter and infused it into the olive oil, and then we had to strain it out. We originally strained it with like a net and a strainer. And Magic Butter has a new system. I don't know if you guys can see, but it's got a little stirrer on the bottom of this. So part of the problem whenever you're using an infused oil is, again, the friction burn. Wherever you're using, whatever you're using, it's going to be hotter wherever the product's touching the pan. And so they've got a little stirring mechanism in there. Now with our commercial setups, now we use overhead stirring mechanisms on large systems. And then we started off with the press. We use a vacuum now instead of press. And here's an industrial infusion plant. I think they're doing, I can't remember, it's some herb from China that they infuse directly into an oil base. And here's the newest thing. I think the most promising on the market is called ultrasonic assist. A lot of people are kind of misinterpreting this as being an extraction methodology in and of itself. But ultrasonic assist is just what it says. It's an assist. So when one of our main problems with an infusion or with extracted using ethanol or a solvent for an extractant is actually getting that oil out of the trichome and into whatever your solvent is. And we use that. We'll grind the product up. We'll agitate the product when it's in the liquid, and we'll basically that's it. Agitate it or grind it, and keep it moving while it's in the liquid. Ultrasonic is taking sound waves, and if you can see these two cylinders there. Those are called ultrasonic generators, and they're basically sound generators. You can set them for different frequencies for different products to actually, it basically bursts open the trichome and allows the oil inside the trichome, which is what we're after, remember? It allows it to make contact with the whatever your extraction medium is and fuse into it. So the pros for the ultrasonic assisted extraction are that it's in concert with infusions and solvent extractions. So it can be used as part of the machinery of which, as you set this up, it can be all part of the original setup. It's a faster infusion time, which is the biggest thing about it. That's its claim to fame, is it's going to speed your whole process up, almost to make it from where you, sometimes, depending on the product we're doing right now, we may soak for 24 hours. This thing probably will never go past 20 minutes. And it's a more robust infusion. It cracks that trichome open and allows all the oil to infuse. The cons are that it needs a carrier. It's an expensive system, and you've got to make sure, again, all of your equipment is explosion proof and UL listed, or whatever your ANSI or whatever your rating is, the service on your equipment. It's got to be rated to for volatile solvents. Unless you're just using it for an olive oil or for an infusion. Here's some current Heischer. I looked at this unit here. Again, these are going to be addendums to the existing system. So I was looking at this for using or infusing our olive oil, and this system, it was like $75,000 for this first system on the left there, and it would have been fairly difficult to integrate into our product, into our system the existing system that we have, because this is more of a pass-through where you run your product past it instead of having it sit down inside of a canister where you're going to be soaking your product. This next one is it has the canister where you sit down and it sits in there and soak it. The box on the right is the ultrasonic control for the generator, and I believe the box on the left is the actual generator. There's another. This is a kind of a combination between the two of a pass-through, and it's got a tank where it can also sit in with a storage tank with a mixer. And then here's one of my favorite pictures out of all. So this is, and we have a system like this that's being put in down in Chile, and it's fairly similar to this. Your product would go into the open door on the top. There's an agitator motor sticking down through the center, and there's two ultrasonic generators, the two canisters on the side. And then the problem again, the same problem. You got to get the plant matter out of here after it infuses with the oil, or after you get your mix into your extractor oil. And then it's got to go through. If it's an extracted oil, it's got to go through a still system, and if it's infused oil, it's got to get filtered, and then pretty much that's it. You're done. Bottled up. So I was digging a little bit here, and I was looking at the microwave assisted extraction, which is kind of, it's just showing up on the horizon, and it helps the profile transfer with heat, but heat's our enemy when we're trying to get the terpenes out. It supposedly speeds up the process. Cons are that it needs a carrier. It's obviously dangerous with volatile solvents, and the heat will destroy terpenes. So, but it's out there, so I wanted to include it in this presentation. The general principle, if you can see, they're basically going to hang the collection vessel down inside of the microwave and go through a condenser. The condenser, by the way, and this micro syringe, the condenser and the micro syringe would be similar to the Soxhlet extraction methodology, the oldest methodology. And then they're going to heat it up inside of the microwave, the collection chamber. So with the volatile solvent, I kind of have questions about that. But there are a couple of units that I found. I don't believe they're rated for explosion proof though. And there's another one now called hyperbaric assisted extraction, and that is supposed to be using extreme pressure and temperature, and it's mainly used to sterilize food. And they have large-scale systems that you can put in canisters and load them up with food that you want to sterilize instead of using UV rays or other sterilization techniques with heat. and you can put them through this and just put it under this massive pressure, and it sterilizes the food. Harborside dispensary